and also the founder of Situwala brand. Help me in introducing him up on the stage to engage us in a very interactive discussion that we're about to take part in. Donovan.
Dr. Bupe, and there on behalf of Francess. Then also have Dr. Nyambose. Yeah, so you have seen most of the people on the panel. These are, of course, great individuals that we are going to discuss basically information based on the book. Starting the discussion, I would simply like our participants at least to say something about themselves and give an introduction about some of their works and the things that they have done, basically so that the audience can have a bit of understanding of the people that we have on stage. We'll start from Dr. Musa.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Musa Gerald. I'm a Ph.D. student of neurosurgery at the People's French University, named after Mumba. I'm also a lecturer of neurology at the same institution. I think some of the medical students here have passed through one of my classes, fortunately. Yeah, thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here. I'm Dr. Bupe Musa. I'm a pediatric cardiologist, majoring in my Ph.D. as well at People's French University, and I'm in my final year.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Francess.SS. I'm studying at the same university, People's French Agronomy Plant Protection. I'm from Sierra Leone, and I'm a lecturer back in my country in the Eastern Technical University. I'm happy to be with you guys. You're welcome.
Greetings, everyone. I think some of you know me already. Do I have to introduce myself? Yes. Right, my name is Joseph Nyambose. I'm a Ph.D. student pursuing my Ph.D. in biological sciences. I'm a chemist. I've done the master's degree in chemistry. I've as well done master's degree in biotechnology. But right now I'm pursuing my Ph.D. in biological sciences at the French University.
All right, so sorry for wasting a little bit of your time. Now we're going to get the table rolling. Wherever acceptable to assign some degree of responsibility to victims in certain situations, or does victim blaming perpetuate harmful narratives and prevent progress? Who would want to start first to discuss the issue? Because we want it to be more like discussion based and not just like me bombarding questions to the panel. So feel free to bring out your perspectives. Okay, now we're going to start with Mr. Nyambose.
Right. Thank you so much. Maybe before I try to attempt to the question, I want just to say a few things regarding the book. The book is really quite amazing. I see lines that speak. And if a young man dedicates himself, or let me say a young lady dedicates herself to reading this book, I believe they can be able to experience much transformation in their lives. There is something new. I was so much interested because when you look at even the title, it's quite interesting, right? So I was curious to really get into the book and see what is really behind the book. And I can say that the writer really took much time, and the thought, the skills, the thinking embedded in the book really shows that somebody really had to put much effort, had to spend so much time on it. Like there's really nice interesting topic that I find where he talks about the locus of control. For me, it's really amazing, and it came out to me as something new, and I learned so much in that. I think as we move forward, I don't want to take much of the time. As we move forward, I would wish just to be permitted a little latitude so that maybe I can just air some of the interesting parts of the book.
All right.
Okay, so looking at your question, maybe would you rephrase again
So the question is it ever acceptable to assign some degree of responsibility to victims in certain situations? In another way, the question goes like, does victim blaming perpetuate harmful narratives and prevent progress?
It's really an interesting question, and I think it's a hard one. A hard one in a sense that we are living in the world that is full of injustice. Or maybe before I dive into the actual what we're talking about, maybe I have to highlight the word victim blaming. What is it about, really? The focus really talks about the people that have been abused in some way, implying the people that have been abused, maybe violence or maybe sexual abuse. And how do we look at these people? Like, mostly we are living in a society where the blame is cast on them. It's cast on them on the sense that, for example, let me just give a scenario of maybe sexual abuse. It is always attributed to say, if women, sorry, I'm not trying to attack anybody here, but I'm just giving as an example, right? So they're saying if women are putting on clothes that are revealing, actually I was reading in a research, you'll find that it shows that they increase the chances of themselves finding themselves in sexual assaults, right? In some situations. Now, if you are to look at that, the blame really, the world blames on the victims of the situation. There's a shift on the people that have perpetrated the action on this victim. Less is being said on these people, but much of the blame goes on the one who has been a victim. They'll put a lot of reasons across to say, well, basically, across saying the way they are dressed, sometimes the way people dress, we are to blame her because, a man had nothing to help but just to do because she was revealing, she was dressed sexually. So when you look at that, is it really the case? Do we really have to take that course of blaming these people? That is exactly where the complex thing comes in. Because we know that we are a people that have to be responsible for a certain degree. We know that, for example, I know that if I don't understand why it's easier for people to involve themselves, for example, to rape somebody, especially sexual raping. I'm talking about raping, yes. It's a little bit tricky because now you begin to question the mind of this person, what is really going on. However, the world blames much on the person who has been raped, especially if it is to do with the dressing aspect of this person.
So, sorry to cut you short. I'm curious, and the audience probably might be curious to hear the comments of the ladies that we have on the panel. And I would like you to probably also pass on the mic. We hear the comments from the ladies and hear what they have to say on that topic, their comments. We'll start with you, Dr. Francis.
Good evening again, Dr. Joseph. You are right. To me, in the concept of raping thing, the concept of raping we are talking about, trust me, the perpetrator has a responsibility, and even you, the victim. Like you are saying rightly, as a lady, I think every lady needs to have dignity. If you think dressing that way, you have something in men, innate tendency in men that, trust me, the way you dress, as soon as you pass, they'll be like, wow. Automatically, what have you done as a lady? If I'm a lady, yes, maybe some lady will not be happy with me, but trust me, when you dress decently and go out, that is how people perceive you. So if you think you can dress naked, move out, and you think you cannot be as insulted or assault will not happen to you, then I think we do blame people that do rape, but to me, it's a two-side story. The responsibility lies with the woman and the person and the perpetrator also. Because the more you expose yourself, the more you expose yourself to danger. Like, for example, let's say, okay, Russia, Moscow, we are living is safe, right? For me, I've been here for almost, it's a 1 year, 6 months. I've not heard of stealing. But that doesn't mean I should not take care of my property. I should move around the streets, put money everywhere. Not all of us have money in the pocket, right? So if you expose your money, what happens? There are people that need it. They'll take it. They'll have hold of it. So the responsibility lies to the two parties.
Okay, so
Yes.
Thank you very much, madam. Curious to hear Dr. Bupe's comment on that.
Okay, so my view is a bit different, mainly because I'm a pediatrician as well. In my line of work, we get to see children who are actually sexually abused. Children as young as 6 months old, 6 weeks old. I've seen a child who's a month old and was sexually abused. So in my thought process, it's changed a lot of how I feel and how I look at sexual abuse. I feel like in most cases, the person who abuses is the one to blame. In most cases, I understand how people come up with okay, clothing and people dressing naked makes these men look at them in a certain way and want to sexually abuse them. But in my line of work, I will nicely tell you that that's not always the case, because most of the time, people have different cultures, people have different ways of dressing, people have a different, not everybody is African and Zambian and will look at somebody half naked and automatically feel like we have to sexually abuse that person. It's not always like that. I agree in some instances because of culture and we're not used to seeing people dressing half naked all the time. It can happen. But because of my line of work, I've come to learn that it's not always that people put themselves there. It's not always like they're the victims or they're being victimized because of the way they're dressing. Because sometimes men just can't control themselves and they end up, sexually abusing children, and that becomes a problem for me. So yeah, that's my line of thought.
Oh, that's a great point. So what are your perspective, Dr. Musa?
Okay, very interesting turn of discussion. Quick slow down. Yeah, I think the issue of sexual abuse. I think we've slightly diverted away from the discussion, in my opinion, because of course the perpetrator is dealt with by the law, right? The law is very, very clear. Then the question here is, should we now talk about the person who comes out and said, I was abused, I'm the victim here? I think that is where the focus is at this point, right? And I think we should start by defining what exactly is a victim, or who exactly is a victim, right? Because in this case, how I understand a victim is someone who deals with a consequence passively, right? meaning that you haven't done anything, but you get a consequence of someone else's action, right? That is a victim, right? So when we define a victim in this way, then we ask ourselves, what decision has led to this consequence, right? And of note is that sometimes we make very, very small decisions that we think are very inconsequential, right? But they add up to a very, very big consequence. And when the consequence comes, we say, I'm the victim, because all I did was, I just walked naked, right? All I did was, I just walked alone at 0-1, right? But you're forgetting that as trivial as that decision might seem, the consequences come, right? And Mr. Joseph in the book clearly states that, when you take responsibility, you take control, right? So in this particular question, right, I think what we're trying to get to eventually is, if we can identify where the problem is, we can identify where the solution starts, right? I think that's where I would like to leave it.
Okay.
Then we'll
Okay.
get
So
back to-
I'm going to divert the conversation based on the keyword that I've heard for most of you, and the keyword I've heard is culture. So one other component that I've heard that has been mentioned is the aspect of responsibility. So I am going to pose another interesting question, starting with, again, Dr. Francess, because she also talked about culture. Does responsibility have any relation with culture? Does the responsibility that you have as an individual, is it determined by culture or is it determined by other factors? What's your perspective on that?
Thank you. Responsibility and culture.
Yeah.
Because Dr. rightly said, when we talk about culture, we have various cultures. And what are culture? To me, these are our traditions, our beliefs. My culture may be different from the Zambian culture, from the Russian culture. So, to me, my own culture, you have the responsibility. So culture and responsibility goes together. When I was a young child, they used to tell me, this is our culture, and it is your responsibility to uphold it, keep it. Because mostly they say women, we are supposed to be in the kitchen, where I'm coming from. You're not supposed to be among men. You're not supposed to do things that is not expected of you, right? So that is what the culture has been teaching us since I was a child. So it is my responsibility to accept that culture. If I don't accept that culture, assuming that culture they have been teaching me, if I don't accept it, I move away from it, what happens? Maybe I'll be victimized. So automatically, I am responsible for what has happened to me because I was not able to adhere to the culture and take up responsibility. If I'm here today, they taught me to go to school, right? That's a culture. Because to me, in my country, they said, of course, in our country right now, we have free education for ladies. So, if I do not accept that perspective, I should not have been here today. But I took up the responsibility that this is what they are expecting from me. So I need to walk through that path. So responsibility and culture, yes, it goes together. And you, the individual, needs to take up that bold step to be responsible, for you to abide by your culture.
Okay, that's a very good response. So I'm not going to again go around on the same topic. I'm now going to add on what you have mentioned, because the issue of culture, again, if we look at it with reference to what Mr. Joseph has written in his book, there is also an aspect that was quite intriguing in the book about relationships. There are these people who would go in relationships, then they would enter the blame game. No, she doesn't want to change. No, he doesn't change. No, I can't do anything. And that's an aspect that, of course, many people face. So how does this have anything in relation, for example, with parents? What's the role of parents? Because maybe I might have been brought up in a certain way whereby something in the house was allowed or accepted. So I'm curious to hear from you, the panel, how does someone's blame habit relate to how they have been brought up? Is it in any way related, and what are your perspectives or thoughts about that? I will start with Mr. Nyambose.
All right, thank you so much. Really, we are mostly mostly by the environment that we've grown up in. And really, even when we come here to Russia, when I see people, when I see how you behave, I get a picture where you are coming from. It reveals more how you were brought up. The issue of relationships, as well, it has been mentioned in the book, is, maybe I have to mention that before two people decide to get into a relationship, I believe they have to reach an intersection point where they have to agree with certain things. There's a saying which says, birds that are of the same feathers fly together, right? So the aspect of getting to agree on certain point is the initiation of the relationship. However, as you get to move together, you begin to learn of each other. And in this path, you'll be able to see traits, or rather habits, from your friends, whether you can accommodate or you cannot. But again, we are talking about the issue of responsibility here, which my colleagues have already mentioned here. It's something that, like referencing from what Joseph wrote in his book, is giving a scenario of you are in a relationship, and then the blame, or maybe someone says, well, I think you deserve better. You deserve something better. Maybe someone, your friend, you break up, and then you just say, well, that woman, she did that. And then your friend tells you to say, I think you deserve better. It's quite interesting, yet tricky, because in such instances, you realize that we quickly rush into comforting ourselves without really asking the cause, without really, we play blind rather on our defects. And then we quickly blame on the other party. And you find that in such instances, relationships are difficult to stand. Now, responsibility, I think, is the key word so far that has been highlighted in the book. And some of the things in a relationship, if you want the relationship to work, of course, it's a responsibility. We cannot get rid of it, because it is through responsibility that we can grow and become better versions of ourselves. It's through responsibility that we'll be able to recognize when we make the mistake and take actions, or rather improve. Even in a relationship, such misunderstandings will arise, will always be there. But I think we have to be open-minded enough and swallow our pride, and recognize our mistakes, and open mind and make things plain to your partner and discuss issues. I think this is the whole instance of a person, the trait that I can see of responsibility, and partners that have been able to deal with this issue, that are open-minded, bringing issues on the table, not burying them in the heart. I believe they are living happily. I think it's one way that you can be able to survive in this relationship.
Okay, so we're now going to also hear the views of Dr. Musa and Dr. Bupe. You can start with Dr. Bupe.
Okay, so which part was the question again?
Yeah, so the basis of discussion was there are people who are in relationships, right? And there are times that come. It's one thing that has been mentioned in the book where someone is blaming the other person. No, this one doesn't change. No, this one's like this. No, I can't change him. I think you deserve better. So in those such kind of circumstances, what's your comment on those kind of things? Is it more based on the individual or it's a concept of responsibility like he has put it?
I think it depends on the type of relationship that they have. I feel like it's always one of you has to take responsibility. Not both people in a relationship have to take responsibility. Um, Again, it depends on the situation. Like, for example, I remember a part in the book where Joseph had talked about a couple. This is a bit diving away from responsibility, but it's just like a way to handle a situation. So there's this couple, they've been dating for a long time, they've been talking all the time, and they're always communicating. Then for some reason, the guy stops communicating with the girl, and he ghosts the girl for a few days or a few weeks or whatever situation that was. So the first instinct of the lady is to say, okay, this man is ghosting me. So he hasn't talked to me for a week or 2 weeks. I've been texting him and he's not responding. He's probably dumped me. I'm upset with this relationship and this guy, it's over, you know? And then this girl is talking to her friends and she's saying, no, I don't know why he's ghosting me. I don't know why this has happened. And then when she sits down and thinks about it, she decides, okay, maybe let me try to think about this rationally. Maybe the guy has got a problem, maybe something's gone wrong that he's failing to communicate with me. Let me just calm down and wait for him to get back to me. So the guy eventually gets back to her and they find out that he actually wasn't ghosting her for no reason. He had some family issues or some issues that they had to sort out at home that he didn't want to burden the girl with. And he apologizes and they find that, okay, everything is fine and he actually didn't dump her. So in that instance, say the girl, if she had decided to text him and insult him and say all kinds of things, it would have been a total different turn of events. That he would have probably thought, okay, this girl is a problematic person and she acts in a certain way when things are tough. But because she decided to think and try to relax and try to think about what the situation could have been, she calmed down and in the end she found that there was actually no problem there. So that's, in my opinion, I feel like that's her taking responsibility for her actions. She's going to sit down and think before she acts. And that's a way of taking responsibility. So I think that in every relationship, both the man and the woman, depending on the situation, have to take responsibility in how they choose to act at this point.
Okay, so from this point, I would like now Dr. Musa to comment on the issue. One important thing that she has mentioned was based on the story in the book. I would see that there was more of miscommunication. So what's your perspective, sir, in terms of understanding people or not feeling like making someone feel like they deserve better or making feel like you're undeserved in a situation? How does communication play a very important role when it comes to such relationships, friendships? It can be business, at work, or in any areas of life.
All right. Maybe before we get to that, I would like to make a comment about your first question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that what is the role of parents on children, and how does that affect how someone perceives responsibility later on in life? Right? I think that's a very, very important question to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that, you know, when you consider the psychology of children, right, there are so many factors. Of course, there's nature versus nurture and all those other things, right? But really, children learn by association, right? You're on the train, you're on the metro, you see a baby, you smile, or then the baby smiles back. The baby now associates smiling. The appropriate response to a smile is another smile, right? And that is how we learn as time goes on. So when kids are going through their early childhood, and every time the child cries, the child is given something. Whenever they demand ice cream, you buy ice cream. Whenever they demand sweets, you give them sweets. They associate demand to result, to getting whatever they want. So that already creates some kind of problem, because even as they grow older, that would be the expectation. So if anything does not work and they want to get the result that they expect, the automatic response of the child would be, there is something wrong with the person I'm asking from. So that creates two types of people, right? It creates, imagine you buy a TV. You turn it on, you press the power button, it goes on. 100 times. For 5 years, you've been pressing the same power button, and the TV goes on. This one day, you press the power button, and the TV doesn't go on. What do? So there are two scenarios here. Either you look at the remote and say, which button am I actually pressing? And then there is another group of people who say, maybe there's something wrong with the TV. Where's my screwdriver? Let's open the TV. You get the idea, right? So it all depends on how you look at a scenario. If you expect demand should give me this particular result, and you're used to that type of response, that will always be the case. So now that brings us back to creating a locus of control. So these are the type of people who always look at other people and say, everything I'm doing is fine, but I've asked for this and I'm not getting it. So the problem is they are not here. Right? So that's the comment I wanted to make about that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So in terms of how to talk to people, right? How to create a relationship with people. Well, in that case, I would say the best way to create a relationship or maintain a relationship is always making your expectations clear. That is very, very important. Right? That removes this issue of I expect, or I think I'm entitled to, or I think in this relationship I'm going to get 1 and 2. If I meet Dr. Bupe, let's imagine she's not my wife, right? Let's say I meet her for the first time, and what I want from her is sex, right? But what she wants from me is a lasting relationship, right? So if I don't tell her all I want from me is sex, and if she doesn't tell me what she wants from me is a long-term relationship, what happens? That's the intersection Mr. Nyambose was talking about. There's no intersection there. We're looking at two different things, and none of us is clear about what the other person wants. As soon as I get my sex, what happens? I'm happy. That's it. She has fulfilled her job to me, right? But she still remains wanting, because what she expects from me is a long-term relationship. So that applies in almost any relationship, right? So if you want something, you meet somebody, make it clear, what I want from you is this. It might not be physical, it might not be monetary. Sometimes the value that you'll be looking for in that particular person is just for someone to spend time with you. That's it. And as soon as that person fulfills that, for you, you're happy. But always make your expectations clear. In any relationship, that's the best to keep on.
Wow, so, okay, you have any comments, madam? Okay, so because of time, we're going to end our discussion since we are working with time. But I believe it has been a very interesting and amazing conversation, which would have obviously gone on for even 3 hours.
Too short.
Yeah, but because of time, we have to round up. Otherwise, I don't know if there are any comments from the panelists that you have to say, or that you feel you didn't say, but just make it a bit faster.
Faster, right?
Yeah, at least in not more than a minute. You have anything to say, sir?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Not more than a minute. Wow. Right. I just want to comment a little bit on the themes of the book, because Mr. Joseph talked about responsibility is one of the things, but an interesting thing again are the rights. You know, it's a thing that has been misconstrued so much, the rights in the world that we live in. And the fact that this effort was taken to redefine through the book itself, to redefine or to show a different picture rather on how we are supposed to look at the rights, I believe the readers of this book will definitely get to understand. You see that it talks about, for example, social media, how it has really changed everything, how people have gotten comfort in one of the memes that are being shown on social media. For example, it talks about, I didn't choose to be born. You see such a thing. You'll find that people, they find comfort in that. Those are sources of entitlements he talked about there. Those are sources where people get to lose responsibility, where they think everything has to be done for them because they basically say they came on earth by accident. You see, there is no such a thing as accident. So it's good that such things were highlighted in the book, and others, they blame it on alcohol. You see, there is this trend in humanity where we have to always find excuses from the environment, but we do not really take responsibility to identify the mistakes in ourselves. He gives a short story again about the students, like the students here that come to study, right? He gives a situation that everybody, when he or she was given a scholarship from Zambia, based on the results they achieved at level 12, they were given a scholarship. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. When they came here, they are expected to meet, because the government has an expectation, looking at your deservingness, kind of, I should say that, have the expectation that you have to succeed in your studies. But what happens? Others here, they come here to enjoy the cities of Moscow, to enjoy the fast life in Moscow. Others, they take responsibility. They know that they have to put in effort, and definitely they see themselves to the end and graduate. It has always been that. There's a question that is being asked there. So should we look at this, should the government rather get to look at this from the two-dimensional point of view to see that just the results at grade 12 are not enough, but rather they should as well look at the aspect, like the end point, how the performance of students as they get into the university, which will ensure them to succeed. Lastly, I'm sorry, I've really taken much of the time. Lastly, allow me to just say, I find the locus of control one interesting thing which was really new for me in the book, and I really lingered my thoughts on this part of the book, where it talks about how people really look into the external factors. We do have two resources, internal resources basically, and external resources. In this context, I'm trying to say that internal resources basically, these are what we feel like the motivation, the ability that, ourselves, like the energy that we believe in ourselves to get our goals done. But again, we have the influence from the external environment that probably they may have an effect on us. However, a lot of people that have strong internal abilities, they tend to achieve a lot. And actually they make good leaders, which was really quite interesting. And I think it's true. If I look at the environment, I've already seen people that have succeeded in whatever they do. They were internally driven. They were God-driven. They do not blame on external factors to say, oh, maybe heaven is against me. We are living in such a world where people, they attribute to everything to say, well, maybe this is not the will of God. Well, we know that God is there. He has his own will. But sometimes, I think, let me not say much. I think we have to really get into this.
All right. I think we'll end on that note. So it has really been a great pleasure to have you on the panel, and I personally have learned a lot, and I believe the audience also can attest to the fact that it has been a very good and worthwhile conversation of having.
One comment.
All right.
One comment. Yes. Just in addition, right? Such that plagiarism. In addition, right? Yeah. So maybe just just a caveat to what is written in the book and what has been discussed. I think one other thing we should not forget is that don't be too hard on yourself. Okay? So of course, yes, look inside. Look at where you could have gone wrong, right? But don't be too hard on yourself, otherwise you defeat yourself. You see? So of course, look at of course things that happen that we can't control. You wanted to go to class, it's raining, you don't have an umbrella. It has happened, right? But of course, deep down, I should have bought an umbrella. It's spring, right? But at that particular point, it has happened. You can't do anything about it. But don't beat yourself until you become depressed and you can't do anything about it. Okay. So the whole idea of that section of the book is that look at where you could have done better. Look at where you could have gone wrong, no matter how small the decision you made that might have led to the consequence, and change it. Don't just beat yourself and go to sleep. Ask yourself, what could I have done better? And then do that, so that next time you don't have to, live through the same consequence over and over again because no one changed. So maybe my take home for some of you who are interested is that look at yourself, but look at yourself for the purpose of changing, not for the purpose of blaming yourself.
Oh, that's a good ending. So thank you very much for everyone who's been on the panel. You can have your seat, sir.